Being an introvert my whole life, I've always had almost all of my friendships and relationships online. I've only had one real-life relationship, and that was in middle school with someone that my mother set me up with for play dates. So as an adult trying to look for a girlfriend at the time, I never cared to search for one in the physical world. It was around 4 years ago when I was 21 and I met a girl in a server who I'll name Tiffany, who started chatting with me privately. We had a lot in common, even to basic standards like our favorite color. We even lived in the same state. We talked for almost 6 months before planning to meet with each other because it was around the time that COVID was going on. I was suspicious at first because she never wanted to video chat me at all. I ignored those red flags because I was blinded by love. We finally planned a meeting date, but she stood me up and blamed it on her car breaking down. We planned 3 more times and it all ended with excuses. I finally got tired of the constant excuses that she made and told her it was over and blocked her. I went on about my life and began talking to another girl a month after Tiffany who would FaceTime. Her name was Sandra, and she and I talked more and got along better than me and Tiffany. I thought I could put Tiffany behind me until a week after talking to Sandra I started getting messages from multiple accounts saying how I moved on too fast and that I cheated on Tiffany with Sandra. After I would block one account, more would show up and some of those accounts would message Sandra as well. I told Sandra it was my crazy ex and to ignore her. A few weeks went by and it stopped. A couple of months later, Sandra and I met multiple times and began dating off-screen. I was happy and once again thought Tiffany was just a past that I would tell people to make fun of. That was until one night after a date with Sandra, I noticed my computer camera was constantly on and would never turn off. I tried to not think anything of it, but eventually decided to investigate it. That's when I found tons of videos and photos taken of me in my computer files that I didn't knowingly take of myself. I immediately tried shutting off my computer, but it wouldn't shut off. That's when I got a text from my actual phone number saying, "You thought you heard the last of me? Well, you thought wrong, love, Tiffany." Chills ran through my body as I remembered never giving Tiffany my phone number. I realized that she was looking through my computer at me. Then within an instant, I heard knocking on my front door. I frantically grabbed my car keys, ran out the back door and drove away. Throughout the drive I received over 100 texts telling me to turn around and that she was sorry for scaring me. The next day my friends and I went back and packed everything and I moved in with them. I replaced my phone and computer as well. I hope this time she won't find me again. Since I'm a female, my parents were nervous about me living on my own because they would always tell me the dangers of being a young woman living by themselves. I've always lived with my parents or with roommates, and this was the first time I've lived all alone. Even though I was nervous, I was excited about being on my own for the first time at 25. The house was a 1-bedroom and 2 bathrooms with a huge basement that already had furniture and a pool table. The very first week I threw a house party in the basement. I invited all my family and friends and had games and music. A little into the party, one of my friends found a stash of VHS tapes in a box in one of the closets. Luckily, I still had a VHS, so we popped in some tapes and watched them. The tapes consisted of older owners in the house who were being filmed for their parties and gatherings. It also showed regular days of people just watching TV or eating dinner. One after the other the tapes got more personal and weird. Almost everyone at the party watched along with me and felt uncomfortable. We all thought it couldn't have gotten worse until it would show burglars breaking in and killing the owners. We continued playing all the tapes and it was different owners starting as normal videos to them ended up getting murdered. I can't explain how uneasy it made us all feel until the last tape at the end saying it was all made up in a movie to scare new owners and it's a tradition and that I would have to play along next. We all laughed and put the tapes away while the party continued. I completely forgot about it, and a few hours after the party ended, one of my friends, Melissa, agreed to stay overnight to help clean up after. As we were cleaning up, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to a package on the ground with a note that said "Open me." My friend and I wasted no time opening it, thinking it was a gift from someone who didn't show up. But instead, it was a note that explained how I could play the game and that I didn't have a choice. We both laughed and continued cleaning. A couple of hours later my friend had to leave and I watched some TV before bed. The doorbell rang again and it was another package. This time it was a remote with a VHS tape. I felt uncomfortable knowing that someone was around my house dropping off packages, especially being that my house was almost in the middle of nowhere and blocks away from neighbors. I put the tape in and watched it count down from 5, then all of a sudden, I could see multiple cameras in my house. One in every room, even in the basement family room that I was in, and I could see myself in it. At this point, I was terrified because I was under the impression that someone would come and ask me and it would be a whole production process. I began to wonder if the tapes were real and if those people died. The doorbell rang again, this time with 2 packages. One was a note telling me it was about to begin and asking if I had any last words. The other had my friend's shoes in them and her car keys covered in blood. I knew she left my house because her car was gone from my driveway, but her keys were in the box with her keychains on them, so I knew it was hers. I didn't take this as a joke anymore and called the police. All of the lights shut off in my house and it was completely dark. I knew if I wanted to hide they would see where I was hiding because of the cameras. Fortunately, there was only one camera in the basement, so I snatched it off the wall and hid in one of the closets in the laundry room. I could hear multiple footsteps going throughout the house, breaking things and unpacking everything to break it or mess with it. They all came into the basement and started searching for me. They didn't have a camera to help them, so I knew I had to make a plan to leave there alive. Once I heard them leave the house, I made a run for it upstairs. I tiptoed as quickly and quietly as I could and made it to my front door. When I opened it, a man was standing in the doorway with a creepy mask that had my name written all over it. He grabbed me and threw me to the floor. He had a knife in his hand and tried stabbing me. I grabbed everything next to me on the floor and hit him with everything. I wrestled him off of me and ran into the woods. He screamed for help and they chased me, one of them with a camera. I ran until I saw a police car and stopped him on the side of the road. 3 other cop cars followed him and they were going to my house. I explained everything to them and they searched throughout the night looking for them. They found my friend tied up in her car in front of a river waiting to be drowned. I showed them the tapes and they tried searching for the missing people in those videos but could never find them. They never found those men either, or the man that sold me the house, and it was forced into foreclosure. This happened almost 10 years ago and I was happy that no one would ever have to experience that again. That was until me, my husband, and kids were looking for homes and found the same house on sale. Most of my daughter's childhood has been in the same house. We were happy here until the most disgusting and creepy thing happened to us. Around this time my daughters were 15 and 13. My 15-year-old name is Sydney and my 13-year-old is Heather. When they became teens I became more strict with them because they were growing up, and that's when boys would be on their minds. Their mom and I were separated, so they would go to her house and have boyfriends on the weekends since she was more lenient towards them. I, on the other hand, didn't allow them to date. I had them through the week because they grew up in this house and they were attached to it. The landlord, whom I'll nickname Johnny, who rented me the house, was a good man. He would always pick them up for school and drop them off after school to let them inside the house and watch them until I got off work. He would sometimes take them shopping or out eating or whatever they wanted. As they got older, he stopped coming around as much and we didn't know why. Johnny and Sydney were the closest, so she took it the hardest. He eventually stopped talking or being involved with us anymore and would have someone else be in talks with us about rent and other bills. We guessed that he was going through a lot and gave him leeway while still having a good friendship with him. That was until I came home one day after work with Sydney and Heather sitting in the living room hysterically crying. Before I could ask them what was wrong, the multiple cameras on the floor in front of them caught my attention. It looked as if there were more than 10 cameras. My heart sank while thinking about where these cameras came from. They both told me how they found a lot of them in multiple areas in their rooms. The only way the cameras ended up there would have been from a previous owner or the landlord, who are the same person. I called the cops to report it, but they couldn't do anything because I had no proof. Since it was late, I told the girls I would handle it tomorrow morning. I could barely sleep through the night because my rage grew more and more thinking about how much I've trusted Johnny around my daughters their whole life. While trying to sleep, I kept hearing bumping from the hallway outside my door. I shouted at the girls to go to sleep and they had school the following day. The noise wouldn't stop, and after ignoring it I couldn't take it anymore and got up expecting to see them and scold them for not listening. What I found was worse than what I was expecting. I followed the noise to see Johnny standing in the shower of my daughter's bathroom. I hid behind the wall and peeked over to see what he was doing. Since I hadn't seen him in years, I was shocked to see him in my house. Once I noticed him taking apart their shower head to put a camera inside, I ran into the bathroom, yanked him out onto the floor, and pinned him down. I threatened to kill him if he didn't come clean about what he was doing. When Heather woke up and saw him, she instantly called for help. That's when he confessed and begged me to let him go. He said he was watching us for only a few weeks to see if we were still keeping the house together. Once I shifted my focus on my daughter and he pushed me off of him and ran out of the house. I chased him a couple of blocks down the street until he ran into traffic and I lost him. I searched his car and found multiple tapes and played them to see that he'd been watching us since we moved in when they were way younger. He even had tapes when I was still with my wife. He was later arrested and sent to prison.